Mr. Rohit Vyas, welcome again to ITV Gold. Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you very much.
We have you here. There's a lot happening in the world, in the country. There's a lot happening in politics. So let's dig right into it. Today saw several hearings at the Hill by the Senate, and the first one that I want to discuss with you is the hearing that was for the Capitol insurrection. This was the first public hearing which featured law enforcement officials who gave their comments on what happened on January 6th when it was concerning with the security failures. So my question to you is, while watching all these hearings and what their comments were, what were your biggest key takeaways? What were some of the biggest revelations from this hearing?
Well, the biggest revelation, which was no surprise, was everyone seemed to indicate that this was a planned insurrection. This would not have taken place had it not been put forward in a sort of a map of how this thing was to be laid out and carried forward. And most of the law enforcement officials who are now not there, the former Capitol Police Chief, the former Sergeant at Arms, et cetera, in the Senate and in the House, et cetera, they all testified. And under questioning, all of them seemed to agree that this was part of a larger plot, which kind of took them all by surprise. Not kind of, but actually took them all by surprise. It also indicated a lot of intelligence failures along the way, and communicating the intelligence that had been known, had been gathered, and to get it to these folks who were at the Capitol itself. It also gave me the impression that there was no way this could have been carried out without inside, assistance, and that's what I'm sure will come out in the further hearings.
Right. The former chief of U.S. Capitol Police, Mr. Sun, today said and called the rioters criminal and said they came prepared for that. When you hear something like this, what kind of a message does it send across the nation? And also, if we're hearing this from the police, why is it still hard for certain people to understand this was an insurrection which was totally planned?
Yeah. It's a very chilling statement. It should give us all chills and frighten every one of us that the very heart of democracy could be attacked in this manner. And when these law enforcement officials who were there, whose responsibility it was to protect the heart of the U.S. democracy and failed to do so for whatever reason, when they tell you it's an act against democracy, it should give us chills. This is the world's greatest democracy. This is the world's biggest, largest democracy, the oldest democracy, I should say. The largest is India, but the oldest democracy in the world is the United States. We are the beacon for the rest of the planet. And when this kind of an attack takes place on what we all stand for, it should frighten every one of us and lead to introspection as to how we can resolve and prevent such things from happening in the future.
Do you think the lack of law enforcement on the day, January 6th, was the biggest reason the rioters were able to come inside the Capitol?
Yeah, well, two things. One was the intelligence failure that is coming out in these hearings, because there should have been plenty of preparation in advance. There should have been information to alert the authorities who are around Capitol Hill and within Capitol Hill to be able to brace for such an attack. Evidently, there wasn't. That intelligence was not communicated as swiftly and as effectively as it should have been. And yes, the federal government should have been responsible in acting on the advice of the D.C. Capitol Police, not the Capitol Police, but Washington, D.C.'s police chief, who would have asked for assistance. And immediately that assistance should have been forthcoming, not just on the day of the insurgency, but days in advance. So, for instance, the National Guard should have been called in much sooner to actually brace for the attack and be there in preparation as something was about to happen. So there are many, many missteps along the way. And absolutely, there was not enough security around Capitol Hill. I've been there. I've covered the area for years and years and years, as you know. And I can never imagine something like this ever happening on the U.S. Capitol.
Yes, and let's not forget, if these were perhaps Black Lives Matter protesters, they would have been treated differently as they were last year.
That's the other issue. Yes, you're right. That's the other issue. And that's what keeps coming up in all the conversations, that had it been the Black Lives Matter folks going out there and protesting, the outcome could have been much, much more different. and perhaps a lot more violence would have occurred against them, those who were involved in the Black Lives movement, should that have happened. So that's the theory going the rounds as well, as to why the action seems so weak from the authorities against these perpetrators of the attack, who are largely white. And that's a question that all of America is going to have to look within to answer.
About 250 Americans or residents have been charged with this insurrection. Do you think that's enough?
There'll be many more. I'm sure there'll be many more. You know, the FBI is fantastic at this type of investigation. I bet you they're going frame by minuscule frame, through all the video that has been taken of that day and that eventful event. And I can bet you that the FBI is scrutinizing every micro frame to figure out who's where to get them, how to zero in on suspects. And you'll be hearing about hundreds more, if not at least scores more, but definitely hundreds more, in my opinion.
The former chief of U.S. Capitol Police in the hearing said that he regrets resigning. He resigned a day after the Capitol insurrection. What are your comments on that?
I think he should have resigned, and he did resign, and I don't think he should regret it. You are responsible. You are the head of Capitol Police, and you bear the moral responsibility. If there's been a breach of the Capitol, then you should resign. And anybody who was there, the chambers were breached. So the sergeant at arms in both chambers, you go, you resign. That's your failure. You look at private America, private corporate America. If there's any kind of a big failure in a corporation, what happens? The CEO's head rolls right away. The chairman's head rolls. Somebody goes. The top has to go, because after all, you are ultimately, the buck stops with you, the person at the top. So if you're in charge of Capitol Police and this happened under your watch, you resign. I don't think he has cause for regret. He did the right thing. He was asked to resign. He had to resign, and he did so.
Right. Let's now talk about the other hearings that also happened today on the Hill. The first hearing was of Judge Merrick Garland. He has been nominated for Attorney General, and today he had his second hearing for the confirmation. How are you looking at him? What do you think he could bring to this country? And also, he promised to preserve the integrity of the Justice Department. Do you think he'll do his job well?
That's precisely what he will bring to the Justice Department, is integrity again, which by all perceptions, by all reports, and by all comment that has been coming in for these past 4 years plus, that the Justice Department has lost credibility because of the way it was put into disarray, according to critics. And therefore, he will bring integrity. He was President Barack Obama's nominee for the Supreme Court, as you know,
right.
And his nomination was blocked by the Republicans. But interestingly, during these hearings, I find that he's getting a lot of bipartisan support. He has been speaking with a lot of clarity. People have gotten to hear him on his views on how justice should be handled in this country, how the Attorney General's position is one of integrity, how the Attorney General should not be bowing to anyone because they are answerable. The Attorney General is answerable to the public. I mean, you are appointed by the president, you're nominated by the president, your nomination is approved by the Senate, okay? But at the same time, your responsibility is to the public, members of the public of the United States. And he is clearly showing that. I don't think he's going to have any trouble being, winning nomination, not at all. And I think he'll be an excellent, probably one of the best attorneys general the country has ever seen.
And Judge Garland, in his hearing, actually stated that his top priority is going to be the investigation of the Capitol attack, as well as he wants to look above partisan politics and policy. What are your comments on that?
Yes, he will probably launch an immediate investigation, which will help the FBI actually, and will facilitate their own investigation. And I'm sure he's going to want to get to the bottom of it. You will see a lot of action against domestic extremism, domestic terrorists here in the U.S. You will also see he has also spoken about reviving the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, where the minorities, etc., will be, cases against them will be looked at, so as to give an equal forum, equal treatment under the law to all people, no matter what their religion or their color or whatever. And that's been missing in the Justice Department over the past 4 years. The perception has been, that's why you had the Black Lives Matters movement.
Right.
You had the perception that law enforcement were unfairly targeting, the Black community. And therefore you had an inordinate amount of deaths in that community at the hands of law enforcement officials. And so he plans to end that. He plans to revitalize the Justice Department. And I don't think he's going to do that. He also has indicated in these hearings that he is against defunding police.
Right.
He does not believe that is a good way to go forward and will not support that. But he does plan to reorient the Department of Justice so that there's more sensitivity toward minorities.
Do you see any push from the GOP against Judge Garland?
No, I don't think so. This time around, for this position of the Attorney General, I don't see so. Now, Supreme Court, it was a lifetime appointment.
Right.
Judges are appointed for life till they die, basically. Also, the Senate at that time was in the was a Republican majority, and they chose to block it for their own reasons. That had a lot to do with politics, and it always does in these matters. But this is a nomination for a position in the cabinet of Attorney General. Merrick Garland is not a controversial figure. As a Supreme Court nominee, he would have been considered a liberal judge. But as Attorney General, and given his statements, he is indicating he will be bipartisan, he will be objective, and he will have a free hand, most importantly, to mete out justice where justice is required in this country.
Another nomination, which is turning out to be quite controversial, deals with South Asian woman Neera Tanden. She has been nominated for administration's budget office, which plays a huge role in the country, in the government. Why do you think she's getting such a slack for her Twitter comments? And do you think it's fair to judge her based solely on Twitter?
Yeah, now this is a good question, but it's also very understandable, the backlash against Neera Tanden. This is the Office of Management and Budget, a crucial funding division of the U.S. government, which will decide a number of things that happens. Neera Tanden, unfortunately, has had a history. She is a Democrat, a diehard Democrat, obviously. But the problem is she has let a lot of it go into her personal comments, right? So she has been particularly acerbic toward Republicans that she doesn't like or didn't like. One of them, case in point, Ted Cruz. She has used some very strong language against Senator Ted Cruz, the junior senator of Texas. She has been seen as a far right liberal Democrat with particularly distasteful views of conservatives. So she is not going to be able to function in a bipartisan fashion, as people would like officials who are confirmed by the Senate to perform. She's going to have a tough time, in my opinion, when her nomination was announced. I figured this was the one nomination that would have a tough time sailing through, because don't forget, it's even a Democrat who's a conservative, Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia, who has already said, he said last week, that he does not intend to confirm her nomination. He will not support it. So that tells you that conservatives from both parties, and there are conservatives in the Democratic Party, consider her a little too off the wall, if you will, sort of the Donald Trump on the other side, okay? To many, Donald Trump was the extreme, Republican with his own brand of GOP ideology and all the rest of it. She's seen pretty similarly on the other side of the coin. And so it's going to be very hard for her to get nominated. They'd have to, the Biden team would have to get at least one other Republican, if not two, to get onto their side, which I don't think is going to happen.
And what happens if she doesn't get nominated?
If she doesn't get nominated, there'll be a replacement. Already the nominee for deputy OMB director is the one who's going to be out there. There are a couple of other names. She will probably be given a post within the administration that does not require a Senate confirmation. So I'd expect her then to become some kind of advisor, because she is close to the current chief of staff, Robert Klain. They're very good friends. They've known each other a long, long time. It's Klain who pushed this nomination forward. And I expect that she will get some kind of advisory role, some kind of counseling role, within the administration that does not require confirmation by the full Senate. But it won't be a cabinet role. Being a cabinet member of the cabinet is a bit different, is significantly different from just being an advisor or whatever, because you're not in on every single thing. As a member of the cabinet, you are up there. You got the president, the vice president, and the cabinet, and so it's a big deal. It will be a big blow to her, but at the same time, she will get some kind of position, I expect, in the Biden administration.
Yeah, these hearings are surely very interesting. They are turning around, and you just never know what's happening with which nominee. Finally, I'd like to discuss with you the $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package by the Biden administration. Yesterday, there was a push to take it forward, and I believe by March 14th, they are hoping to get it signed. Can you give us an insight into what's exactly happening with this package, and what are going to be the next steps that the Congress and the Senate takes?
Well, it was passed. It's going to be passed, I think, this weekend, coming weekend, by the House. What happens is you have the preliminary settings of how this will work. What are the appropriation components of the $1.9 trillion? You have people discussing, mainly Democrats, increasing it from 1.9 trillion to 2.1, for instance, and making it an even bigger package, etc. All that is deliberated in the House, then voted on in the House, and then will be sent to the Senate. Now, the administration has already made it clear that they're not going to wait for Republicans to support them. They'd like support of the Republicans. President Biden has personally said so. He would like this to have bipartisan support. He's also said he would like everyone to realize you got to act big now. This is not the time to talk about deficits or anything like that, because interest rates are at zero. So let's get this thing going now. If we have to to build up a deficit, that's fine. Let's go do it, but get the action out there. So I think it's going to pass. The previous bill expires, I think, the 13th of March, and that's why they have to get this out and approved before that deadline, because all the expanded unemployment benefits, all the expanded stimulus packages, everything like that, all of it ends on the 13th of March. And in order to avoid an interruption, that is the one that occurred during the last time when President Trump refused to sign till the 27th of December, right, till after the whole thing was over. The previous bill before that had expired and then led to numerous delays in all the states to hand out payments. I think they want to avoid that and going to try and push this as quickly as possible. By next week, you're going to see a lot of action on this measure.
Do you think this is a good COVID-19 relief package? How have you sort of evaluated it?
I think it's a very good package. In fact, today, just before you and I got on the air, Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman, was being also grilled in the Senate before the Financial Committee. He was being asked about the fiscal strength of the United States, the long-term outlook, and he also indicated, now don't forget he was appointed by President Trump. And first of all, he indicated change of administration doesn't mean anything, because we at the Federal Reserve look very carefully at the fiscal soundness of our policies, okay, the Federal Reserve's policies. And he too made it very clear, and this is not the time to think about acting big, borrowing big, and sending money out there into the economy. He did indicate that there's plenty of trouble coming for the economy if there is no action taken now to resolve the issues. This pandemic is no one's fault. It's the result of a virus which has disrupted the global economy. And so the time is just to act, to take the right economic measures, the right fiscal measures at this time, and get it underway. So I think this 1.9 trillion, in my opinion, is a little less, actually. It's a conservative view. It should have gone a little more than this, because there are many, many areas and pockets where you need to help things, one of them being the rollout of the COVID vaccine.
Right.
You need a lot of money just to roll the vaccine out itself in time to get into everyone's arms. That's just one aspect of it. There are plenty of homeless people now in the country, many of them because of the pandemic, many of them before the pandemic, whose situations were never resolved. The money is needed to help them, to get them into affordable housing. There are starving people in the country. We've seen the lines outside Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
Whoever thought we'd see lines of cars of people waiting to pick up food, free food, because they're starving. Families are starving. It's a serious situation. And to mitigate that situation, overcome it, the action time is now. That's what President Biden's saying. The Federal Reserve Chairman is saying it. The Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said it. All competent people saying this is the time to act.
Yes, it is surely the time to act. There is so much help needed across the nation by so many communities. Finally, my last question to you has to be about your prediction for the next couple of weeks, especially when you're looking at the Capitol insurrection hearing. What do you think is going to happen?
The hearings will end. They'll come up with some kind of, I don't know if it'll end in a couple of weeks, but they will go on. And then till they reach a conclusion where they will figure where the hearings will conclude, come to some kind of conclusion, most likely that this was a planned insurrection. They will then, that gives the endorsement to law enforcement to go and find out the planners even more vigorously than before. And then once Merrick Garland is confirmed as Attorney General, you're going to see a lot of swift movement to get to the bottom of it, to prevent a future such attack, and to make sure that these extremists, don't get their way. So that's what I see is going to happen. But it's going to be a longer term than a couple of weeks. It's going to be, I'd say a few months.
Oh, wow.
By the time this whole thing, perhaps even till the end of the year when you get to the real bottom of it, because there'll be many, many hidden pathways to finding out who actually was the main planner, who was the instigator. There are guesses now, right from the president down to others, who were the inside operatives, and was this part of a larger plan, which now means it's treasonous. This is treason and active treason against the United States. So there's a lot of issues, a lot of sides that'll have to be examined.
Definitely. Well, thank you for your time here on ITV Gold, Mr. Vyas. It's always a pleasure having you.
Always a pleasure to be on with you. Thank you very much, Aditi.